All right, welcome back, class. We are finally going to get into First John, and we get to do some translation. So I'm excited to get into the text. I hope you are too. Now we're going to be looking at First John. I guess we should start a little bit, start by talking a little bit about the book and the background. This is a beautiful letter. John is writing to a group of folks who have a church that have gone through a split. They've had people leave the church, so the church has been divided. The people who have left the church are false teachers. They're still teaching, apparently, this heresy. And so the people that John is writing to are disoriented. They have questions. They are doubting their own salvation. The heresy, although we have to be careful about trying to be too specific, it clearly is dealing with the atonement. And the things that they're hearing, it is not lining up with the apostolic teaching that they've heard. So they're questioning their own salvation even. And John is writing to encourage, to comfort, to exhort, to command, to teach. And the heresy itself, it's hard to narrow down exactly. We're having to mirror read. In other words, we're having to read between the lines. It's like listening to someone talking on the telephone. You hear half the conversation, and we can tell by the letter certain things about the heresy. It does seem to be, Docetic in nature. So it could be Docetism, and this comes from the Greek word dokeo, and that which means to seem. And this would have argued that, yes, they would have accepted that Jesus was divine, but it rejected the idea that he was human, that he came in the flesh. This idea, this notion would have held to this worldview that the spiritual is ideal and the material world is evil and bad. And so they would have rejected Jesus' humanity. Now, another thing would be Cerinthianism, and Cerinthus was a contemporary of that time, someone of that time who believed and taught that Jesus was a man and the Spirit of Christ came upon him at his baptism but left him at the cross. Now, this causes major theological problems. It's unbiblical, obviously, but clearly that undermines the atoning work of Christ, who was fully God and fully man at birth, at the cross, at his death, at his resurrection, who died for our sins, right, as a human and fully God. I tend to lean toward this Cerinthianism. I think that's what's going on. But again, clearly Christology is at play here. Who is Jesus? And the question of his atoning work for sinners. So that seems to be the background of what's going on here. As we listen, as we read the letter, note what John is saying here. Again and again we hear these three tests of what it means to be a Christian. One who believes that Jesus is the Son of God, the Christ, who has come in the flesh. One who obeys God's commands. And lastly, one who loves others. The loving of one another is something we see throughout the letter. And all three of these points come up again and again and intertwine with one another. And so we'll talk about that as we press forward. So let's jump in. And the first four verses are challenging. They're difficult to a degree. So we'll go slow. Take your time on these. And I'll be pointing out certain things initially that I won't point out as we move on. So now what I'll do here is I will read the text in Greek in such a way that you can read the Greek after me, if you're in a place where you can do that. So if we were in a class together, that's what I would do, and just have the class repeat after me as we read. So just you can be practicing your pronunciation skills. And then I'll go through and translate it, and parse the verbs, and I will note syntactical observations. All right, so let's read together. Ha ein ap arches, ha akeka amen, ha heorak amen, tois aphthalmois hemon, ha etheasametha, kai hai cheres hemon, epselaphesan, peri tu lagu, tes zoes. All right, very good. Let's jump in. So right from the beginning, we see a relative pronoun, ha. I see the rough breathing mark. I see the accent. And it says that which was ein. This is just the imperfect of me, imperfect, active, indicative, third singular from me. Oops. So amen, amen, eta, ason, right? Third singular. That which was arches. See, the omicron has dropped out because of the vowel. So we have from, arches, from the beginning. Remember that that genitive will often drop an article if it's definite. So we can put that back in if it makes sense. That which was from the beginning. Well, one thing we need to deal with is the relative pronoun. It's neuter, right? So if John is referring back to Jesus, why is it not masculine singular? And there's debate on this, but I think probably it's referring to Jesus' life and ministry in total. That which was from the beginning. So yes, Jesus, but also his ministry as well. And the neuter is well suited to grasp that, point to that. Ha, akeka amen. So we have another relative pronoun here. That which, you remember, akuo has an irregular perfect. So this is from akuo, and it's just irregular. You probably memorize that in elementary Greek. But we see that first plural ending. So just a perfect, active, indicative, first person plural from akuo. So that which we have heard, right? And then we have another relative pronoun, that which heorakamen. Now this is from horao. And again, we have that kappa alpha, and we have an irregular perfect, but we do see it as a reduplication, irregular, just like we had irregular reduplication here. But it is a perfect, active, indicative, and I see my first plural ending, first plural. So that which we have heard, which we have seen, tois ophthalmois hemon. Now this is dative. You will go to the ophthalmologist, right? This is eyes, so dative plural. And normally we would say 2 or 4 with the dative, but we're going to be expanding those categories. So here, this is a dative of means, or sometimes it's called instrumental dative. So either one of those, dative of means or instrumental dative, is what we're dealing with here. So with our eyes, right? What was the instrument? Well, we have seen with our eyes, instrumental dative. And notice the perfects here, right? The perfects are usually, if not always, well, maybe not always, but usually you want to take note when you see a perfect. And remember our verbal aspect, right? We've got past, present. So a little bit of time element. The present has that sense of continuity, but in the perfect tense, we have that completed action in the past with a resultant state. So that which we have heard and the effects of that are still felt, the state, resultant state is being emphasized. That which we have seen with our eyes, notice the hemon there, the personal pronoun. And then we have another relative pronoun, ha, etheasametha, that which, and this is from the aomai. Okay, notice the augment, right? Notice the sigma alpha. So what do you think that is? Augment, sigma alpha? Yep, you're dealing with an aorist. Whoops, get my pens working again. So we have an aorist, and I have a middle ending here, don't I? So aorist, middle indicative, first plural, which we beheld, right? Which we beheld, and hai, cheres hemon, and cheres is hands, have the personal pronoun, and our eyes, and our hands, cheres, epsilapheson. Notice your augment. Notice the sigma alpha. So you have aorist again, aorist, active, indicative. Got the third plural ending, which makes sense because we have a plural subject. And this is from pselafao. Pselafao. Okay? Which we beheld and our hands have touched. Pselafao. So notice the sensory verbs here, right? Emphasizing the humanity of Christ in the flesh. Notice the we have heard, we have seen. So, and later in the letter, John will use what's called an inclusive we, where he's talking about himself and the readers. But here he's not including the readers, he's talking about himself and the other apostolic eyewitnesses. So this affirmation of his eyewitness testimony, his eyewitness authority. All right. And so we have seen and beheld, and our hands have touched, peri plus the genitive, concerning to lagu, the word. So that's in the genitive because of the preposition. But then we have tes zoes, concerning the word of life. And this genitive here, so we have to lagu, tes zoes. Now, up to this point, we've just typically put in an of for the genitive, right? But we're going to expand those categories. We want to be more specific than that in this course. There's a lot of different categories, and we'll get into those, but for now, I'm going to be noting some so we can get familiar with them. Here, it looks like this would be a genitive of content, possibly, at least for the quiz. Might see this on the quiz. Just know it as a genitive of content. In other words, the content of the word is life itself, right? It could be an objective genitive. Some other options are out there. But I think we can narrow it down as the content of the word. Another thing I wanted to mention is note this construction here where you have to lagu tes zoes. And there was a guy named Apollonius Discalus, and he was a grammarian in the 2nd century, Greek grammarian, and he saw this pattern where when you have a head noun, that would be like the noun to lagu, and then you have a genitive connected to it. The head noun and the genitive will both typically either have the article or they both will lack the article. So they'll both be articular or both be anarthrous, about 70% of the time. And so there we do see Apollonius's canon, Apollonius, so I gave you his name, Apollonius Discalus, but we would call that Apollonius's canon. So that would be both have the article or both lack the article. It's very common. Dr. Plummer, I think I heard him once encourage the class if they would name a child after Apollonius Discalus, he would give them bonus points. But to this point, I don't think anyone has taken him up on that. I do think someone named a dog after Apollonius Discalus. I don't know if they got bonus points. But all right, so verse 1. I'm trying to track my time. I want to go slow, but not too slow. All right, verse 2. Let's read together. Kai he zoe ephanerothe, kai heorakamen, kai marturumen, kai apangelamen humin. Tain zoein, tain ionion. Hetis ein, pras tan, patera, kai ephanerothe hemin. Good. All right. Let's translate. So we have kai and, kind of a parenthetical remark here, and he zoe, just a noun, means life, right? The life. Then I've got my verb here. Notice I've got the augment. I've got a theta, eta. Remember the theta looks like the big easy chair. Guy kicked back in the easy chair with his remote. I don't know if that quite looks that way, but if I make it bigger, I can draw better. But you've got a very passive person kicked back in his easy chair. So this is our passive indicator. So augment, theta, eta, aorist, passive, right? This is an aorist, passive indicative, and this is a third singular ending. Thein, theis, they, themin, theta, theson. And this is from phanerao. Phanerao. And we would translate this, and the life was manifested, right? Was manifested. Kai and heorakamen. Again, we've seen this, so horao. And this is our perfect. It's irregular, but we see that kappa alpha, first person plural ending. First plural. And, make it a little smaller here, marturumen, and this is from martureo. Okay, now why is it umen? Well, remember that's a contract vowel. So you have marture, and then we have amen, epsilon, omicron clash together, and it contracts to u. Contracts to u. So from martureo, and this is a present, active, indicative, third person singular. Right? Oes ein, amenete usi. And I should have made my lines bigger. This may help you, by the way. Throughout seminary, what I would do is I would take my Greek text. I've always used BibleWorks, but I'm having to shift over here, actually in the next few days, to another Bible software. But whatever Bible software you may be using, if you have access to one, and you can get the Greek text on your computer, what I would do is just copy and paste the passages I was going to translate, or maybe the entire book, whatever it was, into a Word document. And then I would go in and just increase the font and then like triple space it. I think this is double space. I need to have a little more room to write, but I would do that, and then I would translate beneath it, and then above it I would parse my verbs or make observations about the syntax, and then I would take notes as well on notebook paper in class. But that helped me, so I passed that on to students before, and it seemed to be helpful. So that may be something you want to do. But again, do what works for you. So let's pick up where we're at. And we have seen perfect tense, and we are testifying marturumen and apangelamen from apangelo. And again, remember that gamma, when it hits with another gamma, it's going to be an N sound. So when we are proclaiming, this is just, I have my first plural ending, present, active, indicative, first plural. And we are proclaiming humin to you, right? Pronoun. Tain zoein, tain ionion. And notice I see the two tains there, and so I know this is an attributive adjective. The endings don't look exactly the same because this is called a two-termination adjective. So masculine and feminine will share an ending, but it is agreeing with that feminine accusative in gender, case, and number. And so what's he saying? We are proclaiming to you eternal life. Tain zoein, tain aonion. And this is a relative pronoun. Notice my rough breathing and accent, just an alternative form. Which, ain, again, this is just a me, and it's just an imperfect, active, indicative. Amain, ace, ain, third singular. Which was, and then I have pros ton patera. Now pros, you may have memorized the gloss as to or toward, but it can also be have a sense of association. It can mean with, and here it means with the Father, and kai ephanerothe, augment, theta, big easy chair, kick back. I'm going to have to draw a good picture before it's over with. But remember, being very passive. So this is just aorist, passive, indicative, and then thein, theis, they, just my third singular aorist passive ending, right? And again, this is from phanerao, and was manifested to us. Calls in, right? And the life was manifested. Isn't that amazing? The life was manifested. Jesus is the life. All right. Let's see how we're doing on time here. All right. Let's read together. Whoa, goodness gracious. Ha heurakamen, kai ake kaamen, apangelamen, kai humin, hina kai humes, koinonian ekete, methemon, kai he koinonia, de he hemetera, meta tu patras, kai meta tu huiu autu, Jesu Christu. All right. Translation. Relative pronoun. Always remember that rough breathing and the accent is the key. That which, heorakamen, we've seen horao, and that is a perfect, active, indicative, first plural, which we have seen and we have heard from akuo. Perfect, it's an irregular perfect, active, indicative, first plural. Apangelamen, we proclaim. So this is from apangelo, and this is just a present, active, indicative, first plural. And we proclaim also humin, to you. Remember, kai can be and, but also, and even also. And we proclaim also to you. Hina, now hina can be a purpose hina, can be result, not as often, but can be, and they can also be content. Oops. And so here in context, it's a purpose hina. So that, right? This is what the implication is. So that, and another thing about the hina is it's one of those markers that indicates a subjunctive is coming. So you see hina, you see aon, hatan, hasan, that an particle, you know a subjunctive is coming. And so just, we'll put a sign here. This is our subjunctive alert. So that also, humes, you, just a pronoun, and I see fellowship here. I notice that looks like an accusative ending. So I'm thinking, that's probably my direct object, right? So I'm looking for my verb, and then there is my verb indeed. And it's also you, fellowship, and then my verb. Now that is subjunctive, isn't it? It's from echo, and I've got that elongated stem vowel. So that's just a present, active, subjunctive, second person plural, right? O-ace, a, omen, ete, osin. Again, just for the sake of clarity here, elongated stem vowel. So so that also you may have fellowship, right? And then we go met hemon. Notice the meta has shortened to meth because of the vowel. It's dropped the alpha and it has a rough breathing, so that tau has just shifted to a theta, so air is coming out. The aspirated cousin of tau. And meta plus the genitive, I met up with some friends after class, right? So with the genitive means with. So that also you may have fellowship, methemon, with us. And then we have kai here. Now, this is a bit tricky because we have kai, that looks like our conjunction, but we have de here. And these are things that kind of threw me when I was in my first year or so of elementary Greek. I'm like, too many conjunctions, right? De is functioning like your conjunction, right? So that's really should be going here. And we shift it in our mind. De and, so kai here is functioning more intensively. Indeed. We would say, he koinonia, we have fellowship, and then we have a possessive adjective, he metera, right? And that's just our fellowship. Indeed, our fellowship. And then we have an ellipsis here. And remember, Greek will often drop a word if it's understood. And so we have est in there from eimi, right? Indeed, our fellowship is meta to patras. Meta to patras, I should say. Meta plus the genitive. Indeed, our fellowship is with the Father. And meta plus the genitive, with his Son, with the Son of him. But we would smooth that out. And with his Son, Jesu Christu. Now I have a genitive here, right, because that's requiring it. Meta takes a genitive. But this is in the genitive because it's up against this genitive, wiu autu, and then this is called a genitive of apposition. Jesu Christu is a genitive of apposition. It's just a way of restating the noun it's connected to. If you can stick in the word namely, then it's a genitive of apposition, most likely. And with his Son. And who am I talking about? Jesu Christu, Jesus Christ. And that's called apposition. Remember that for the quiz. You might just see it, okay? See how we're doing on time here? Well, forgot to turn my counter down. We'll press on here. Verse 4, and then we'll take a break and regroup on time. Read with me. Kai tauta graphamen hemes. And I know I'm reading kind of slow. We'll read faster as we get going. Hena he chara hemon e peple romane. E peple romane. Good. All right. And tauta, it's a demonstrative pronoun. These, and we would just say these things, graphamen, and this is just from grapho, and it's a present, active, indicative, see my ending, first plural. And these things, and it doesn't have to have a pronoun, does it? Because that's embedded in the ending. We know it's we, but John puts hemes graphomen. And this is one of those instances where this is clearly intensive. And we write these things to you. Who are we? Me and the others who have seen Jesus, who saw him, who touched him, you know, who we were the apostolic witnesses, right? So he's affirming that. And we have another hena here. Hear the subjunctive alert going off. Hena, that, so that, purpose hena, so that, hechara hemon, this is just joy, our joy, and then there's my subjunctive. I knew that was coming up, just had to be on the lookout for it. But I'm just kind of peeping ahead as well, because I see that, I'm like, that our joy, and what do I see after it? A participle. So an AME verb and a participle is going to make a periphrastic construction. It's called a periphrastic participle. Okay. Now let's conjugate this. So a, what is that? It's just from AME, and that is a present active subjunctive. A, just third singular. And just elongated. It's just that elongated subjunctive form of AME. Okay, present active subjunctive, third singular. But again, it's working with this participle to express the action that our joy may be. And then I've got this participle built on plerao. And let me take my scissors, my scalpel, and I'm going to take this apart. Okay, I've got some reduplication. I see this men morpheme here, which is an indicator of the participle pass or middle. And so I'm thinking it's a perfect, and a perfect passive or perfect middle. And this, in this context, is a perfect passive. Remember, menas, mene, menan. And this is just a nominative, feminine, singular, perfect passive participle. Nominative, feminine, singular, perfect passive participle from plerao. And we would translate that our joy may be complete. Okay? Yeah, I think we're good to go. Let me mention one thing before we press on. I just love the wording here in verse 3, and I should have mentioned this idea that we proclaim this also to you, that you also may have fellowship with us. Indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And so you see this emphasis of the vertical relationship, right, we have with the Father and Jesus Christ. And it is in relation, it affects our relationship with one another, doesn't it? So a beautiful picture there in verse 3. All right, next up we'll tackle verse 5.